Friends, welcome and welcome back to Andy's Rec Room. Today, we're going to assemble the CarboXtreme Tonearm Mark II. I'm going to break it into sections, so it'll be fairly simple and methodical to put one together. The first thing you're going to have to do, if you're doing it yourself, is print the parts. Now, I am not too picky in terms of what I've been doing for the printing, like a medium adequate quality for the print itself. And the infill about 30%. Now, the fun thing about making your own tonearm is you can modify these particular parameters. For instance, the headshell could be done at 50% if you want a bit more mass. This one is at 30. You can also mix it up. You could do, say, the headshell at 30%. You could do the decorative bits at about 50%. Now, these bits also will act as a slight buffer for any vibrations trying to get down to the tonearm, so it can be fun to experiment with different densities if you wish. Once out of the printer, the parts come out reasonably well. There's not much to do in terms of getting them ready for the assembly. One thing I would recommend is reaming out any flash that might be occurring inside the little printed parts. So what I do is I just run my X-Acto quickly around the openings, and I make sure that it'll fit on there properly. And also, the other reason I'm doing this is when you apply glue, and it'll be quite interesting when we get to that stage, you're going to have a little bit of residue on the carbon rod. So if there's no beveling on either the main part or the decorative part, the glue might prevent it from sliding all the way and making good contact. So a small bevel is really recommended. So I just go through these guys and give them a bevel. I'm not going to do all of them because it's going to be the same thing many times. The other thing that I do is I have a sanding sponge, and some of the parts, because it comes down to a very fine point, you're going to see just a little bit of flashing around there. So I just gently take that off with a sanding sponge. And very, very little, just to get it level. I'm trying to show that well here. And we're pretty much there. And then any remaining bits inside, you can just run the blade very carefully. You don't want to take off too much. So what you're doing is basically getting a nice smooth surface, and it'll also slide very well into the assembly process. And there you go. So that's basically the idea. Just clean it up a bit. And I won't do the other one, of course, because it'll be the same thing. It's pretty self-explanatory. So for the main pieces, bit of reaming. Same with decorative pieces, a little bit of reaming. Do a quick check of the parts. For instance, make sure your lifter fits into the slot here. Nice and snug. So my printer is quite well calibrated, so there's no issues there. I wanted it snug intentionally. And aside from that, that's the basic cleanup on the units. Now we're going to move on to a slightly more complex item. So I'm going to stop right here, and we're going to take just a super, super short cut, and I'm going to move on to the counterweight. The counterweight is a little bit more in depth. Okay, I'm back with a pair of pliers. So the first thing when I'm printing these guys is I am using support for this one piece here. The other pieces don't need it, but this one does. And I've been printing with Orca Slicer. I'm finding I'm getting very, very good results with Orca Slicer. I'm going to try to add links to the video afterwards of things I've mentioned. I've been using Cura for a long time. I think it's a brilliant software package. But Orca Slicer has given me just a little bit more control. And I'm also printing, there's one particular setting that's inner, outer, inner for the walls. And it gives a very, very nice finish. Like you can see, hopefully it's showing up well in the video, how nicely it came out here. It's very, very professional looking. So for the supports, They come out quite easily. Again, very nice supports in the default setting in Orca Slicer. They come out really, really easily. Everything's just popping out real nice here. And that's pretty much it for the removal here. Now, I'm sort of focusing on this particular part because this guy is going to hold the eccentric weight component. So as you printed it, it'll be a little snug. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and get rid of any obvious flash here. And just get it kind of roughed in. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take a round file and I'm just going to look for areas where there's a little bit of any buildup during the printing process. Like over here, you can see there's just a little bit of jagginess in there. Of course, as the layers build up on an FDM printer, you're going to get that. So as I'm going, I'm not taking off tons, I'm just trying to level it out and see where I'm ending up. And that's all it took. So it's not a big process. I'm doing 0 tolerances in my prints, and I've made so far multiple of these counterweights and they all work well. Sometimes a little bit tighter depending on the temperature and your filament and so forth. But this one went in really, really well. I'm going to have a tool that's going to be joining this, how to turn this, because it should be reasonably tight in there because it acts as an eccentric counterweight. So you can adjust the micro tuning, and also for azimuth. You can swing it either way because it is a unipivot tone arm. So for prep, that's pretty much it. And talking a little bit now about the printing I'd recommend. I experimented previously with printing the items flat on the bed, and they turned out, reasonably well. The only difference is if you use supports internally, you got to dig it out from the tube section. So what I recommend is just print them vertically. I like the aesthetic of the lines, the way the print lines show up, and I've had very, very good results for the diameter of the hole where the carbon rod goes into. So that works very, very well. These two, I set them up as one big print, and they all come out fantastic. So the printing process is fairly simple. The reaming is important, making sure the openings are okay. And what I recommend too is, I got some handy extra arrow shafts here. Just make sure everything fits well. Just give it a quick fit. So these are just lovely. And they're going to make your assembly so much easier. Same for these little guys too. If any of them end up being like that, sorry, that's the tip one. If any of them being a little bit too snug, you can ream them out. And in the assembly stage, I'm going to show you if some of them end up a little too tight, how to fix it. It's not overly complicated, but as these came out of the Easy Bake Oven, no problems at all. Super nice fit. Everything's good to go. So all the bits are ready here for assembly. The last thing I would say is for aesthetics, when you print larger openings like that, you might get a bit of flashing down here again and again, just gently. You can just take some of that off. And then you can just run the file. Get it smoothed out. You want the thing to look good. You know it's going to sound good, but you want it to look good. So there you go. Get these guys out of there. And then, of course, you can take our friend the sponge and just work it. And you can see it's already looking, better. And you can just take it as far as you want for that. And I suppose these pieces, if you really wanted to get fancy, you could sand them down, prime them, and paint them, and they'd look, basically molded. I like the 3D printed aesthetic, so I'm not going to do that. I don't recommend doing it. I don't see much point in that. And as far as that goes, I think we're pretty much ready to get to the assembly stage. So once again, I'm going to take a little break here. I'm going to reset the wonderful mess I've made. As you can see, it's great fun. And we're going to come back and start putting this beast together. There are a couple of very, very important steps that are going to come up. And you notice I'm working on glass. This is going to come into play for the next section. For this part here, it doesn't really matter, but it will for the assembly. Okay, guys, hang in there. I'll be right back. All right, friends, I'm back, and we're going to continue. This is the most important sequence when you're building this particular toner. What you want to make sure is that the two blocks are perfectly aligned. And the way I have found to do this is, you can use any adhesive you want, but I find with CAs you have a little bit more control of the process because you can do one section at a time. So what I'm going to focus on first is I'm going to do the head shell, if you want to call it, and I've put the pivot point all the way to the back. Just move it over here to the back of the rails. It gives me a more accurate alignment. I've also just pushed them in so they're perfectly flush. And what I'm going to use is, I have 3 CAs I'm going to be using today. I got them from CecCorp, great local company. They haven't paid me, they haven't donated anything, nothing free. I went out and bought it because it's really, really good glue. So I'm going to start off with the extra thin, and I'm going to put a super small dab at this little joint here. And with the capillary reactions, you can see it gets sucked right in. So what that's doing is we're just setting these rods so they're even, so they're not poking out one way or the other. It's just an initial setting just to get everything going. So you give it a few seconds, and this glue is quite fast acting. I think it's probably already, yeah, it's already snagging it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lift it up very carefully. And I'm just going to add a little bit more of this glue here. And a little bit goes a long way. And what I'm going to do is, I'm also going to, I'm sorry it won't fit into the close-up camera shot, but I'm going to put a little bit on the front end as well. The reason being, I don't want the tubes to have the ability to wiggle in there. So there you go. So those are the 2 tubes. Very, very nice. Now the game changes a little bit at this point, because what you want to do now is you're going to want to add the pivot point. Now you can see there's a whole bunch of pieces out here still that we have to add. Now there's going to be another very crucial moment in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off these guys, and I'm going to put on and I'm going to slide them so there's a little bit of a gap here, maybe about 1 inch. And when you're putting them on, what you have to do is, this is going to be the side that'll take the cartridge, and this is the side where we're going to put the screws in with the lifter. You want this little divot to be on the bottom, because this is another very, very important piece of the puzzle, so that's got to be on the bottom. So let's add the other piece. I'll get it on the right way here. All right, there we go. Okay, so I've got the 2 pieces on here. We're going to put the pivot point back on. And what's next is going to be a very, very careful measurement to ascertain the distance from the head shell to the pivot point. I'm going to include in the kit, or in the plans, or even if you purchase a fully assembled one, a guide with it so you can get exactly 12 inches from needle tip to pivot point. You can also just measure it with a ruler. I've done that as well, but you got to be quite careful how you do that. So it has to be extremely, extremely accurate. What we're going to do now is we're going to pause again for one moment, because there's a step that I have to do that's not on this table. It's my soldering station. And I'm going to add a little heat insert into this little guy here. Now this is the pivot point where all the motion takes place. It's an incredibly simple design. It's going to be a little brass insert, threaded insert, and it's going to receive this hex bolt. Ideally, you want to cut it down to 3 mil. For now, I'm just going to use this one just, for demonstration purposes. So this is going to have to happen over there. So guys, I'm going to tune out for another second, and I'm going to come back with the section on how to install the heat insert, and then we're going to come back, measure this, and then we're going to glue these pieces in place. And as you can see right now, like even with a little bit of a twist, it's not exactly accurate. So we're going to make sure that this part is completely parallel to this part over here, just how we did before with all the inserts added. Okay guys, be right back. Okay guys, so we're over here at my soldering station / 3D printing world. What we're going to do next is we're going to do the heat insert. So the way this works is we're going to pop it in upside down. It'll pop in up to a point where the ridges stop it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the soldering gun and just very, very gently place it here. You don't want too much heat, just enough to get it melting. I'm at 500 degrees here, and don't push down too hard, take your time. When it starts to go, you're going to see it start going down on its pretty much on its own. I'm not adding any extra weight. There we go. And what we do then is quickly flip it over, push it into place. I'm using a steel block here, and you can see it's a perfect fit, absolutely flawless. So that's the way that you get the insert into there. It'll work every time if you have a very level surface. Ideally, steel is great because it's cold. So when you put it down there, boom, hold it down for a sec, it locks in. And there you go. So we're going to move back to the assembly now. All right, I'm back. So I did the threaded heat insert over at my soldering station where my 3D printer is. And it basically will come out, as you saw in the other little snippet, like this. What we have to do next is we have to prep the little pivot. So what you have to do here is you have to add 4 pads of double-sided tape. Now, what's really important when you're doing this is you have to have something fairly robust. So what I'm using is, you can see my very well used CecCorp double-sided tape. This stuff is really, really good. And you want something that's strong, because you got to remember your whole tonearm is being suspended by those 4 pads. So if you use some generic, that white stuff you can get at the dollar store, it'll probably work. But I would say go with something really high-end, like a Scotch product, and you should have no issues with 3M double-sided industrial tape like this. And this roll has been, I built probably 6 units so far with it. It'll last you for decades. So there we go. So now that we have that done, we can continue. One thing I also want to mention is, one thing I did off screen was I cut the tubes. Now, with carbon fiber, you have to be careful because carbon fiber is really not that good for you. So you have to be well ventilated. You got to use protection, respirator, or whatever you have that'll protect you from the dust, depending on how you produce it. What I do is I use a vacuum cleaner that has a HEPA filter built in and a mask, and then I cut it. Now to get an accurate cut, I'm sure most of you have your own ways of cutting arrow shafts or other tools on hand. I use a fine hacksaw, and I actually use one of these. You can print another one if you don't want to damage the one you're going to use for your turntable, but this little holder here for the arms is a great way to cut the tube. You pass the tube through, mark it, tape it down on this side, put it in the vise, and it'll get you pretty much a perfect cut every time. You can finish off the ends with a little bit of sandpaper. Again, really careful for the dust. This stuff is toxic, it's nasty. You don't want to be sucking that in, so take good care with that. Alrighty, so we're at a point now where we continue with the assembly. I'll be cutting in and out a couple times here, but I'm going to show you a couple options of how to adjust the length between the head shell and the pivot holder. And this is probably the most critical thing you're going to be doing in the whole project. The rest of it is fairly self-explanatory, you're not committing to anything final, but here you are. You're basically setting up the distance between the pivot and your stylus. So what you can do here is, there's a couple options. For most folks who don't have a large printer, like mine is 400 by 400, so I got no problem printing larger items. I'm including a file for a little crosshair knob. It sits on a 3mm bolt that goes through the centering device, which is also included in the files. So with this system here, what you have is a way to get it perfectly centered. Now, when you're installing all this stuff, of course, make sure it's pressed down really well, this guy's on properly, and all that kind of good stuff. So what you're going to do is really simple. You're going to put your ruler on here at 12 inches, and you're going to measure as accurately as you can to the needle tip. This is one approach to doing it. The other approach, if you have a larger printer, is to print one of these guys. And you'll probably need a slightly longer screw if you want to be really accurate. For parallax, you want to get this thing probably spot on. So this is just showing you how to do it. So basically what happens here is you pop this unit on the bolt, and again you have to measure right to the stylus needle. This is obviously a bit off, but you get the idea. And be very, very careful. You get a nice cartridge. This is an AT3600. It's pretty robust. I'm not going to hurt it. But if you got, you know, a moving coil cartridge worth thousands of dollars, really be careful with this step. You don't want to trash your needle. So this will give you an accurate measurement either way. And one thing, when you print one of these, slap it on your ruler and actually measure 12. Mine came out slightly off, so I can compensate for that. And my printer is well calibrated, but just be careful on that one. This has to be perfect. If you're going to use one of these, double check it with an accurate ruler just to be safe. If you're using the other way, well then, so long as your ruler is accurate, you're going to be fine. But either way, be very careful at this point. I can't reiterate it enough times. Just make sure that you're very, very cautious here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually remeasure it myself and place it, and then I'm going to do the gluing very much how I did for the first part. So hang in, guys. Okay, guys, so I got my measurement done. I double checked it with a ruler because I have another Tonearm I've built with the exact measurements. So I just double check, cross-reference to make sure everything's good. So there's a couple of things now that you have to do that are absolutely critical. So once you have that measurement down, be really careful when you move this around. And what we want to do is hold down this insert and tap. You see there's a little bit of noise there? That means it's not straight. So you got to give it a little bit of a twist. So you keep doing this. Now there's no sound. So I'm going to do one last measurement just to make sure that everything is okay. So I know that the tubes are parallel. There's no warping. And everything checks out right down to the millimeter measurement wise. So now what I'm going to do is, I have this all laid out. I'm going to apply just a bit of gentle pressure here, make sure everything is tacked down. And once again, we're going to do just a little bit of gluing here. So you can see the capillary reaction just pulls it right in again. And the nice thing about this ultra thin one, it's really quick. It goes in quick and gets a bond going on for me. So while the thing isn't totally full of CA, what I'm going to do is just quickly pick it up, and against a light background, I'm just going to eyeball it right down. And that is absolutely perfect. So now what I'm going to do is, just like with the other Tonearm, I'm going to be applying glue here. Or rather, not the other Tonearm, the other section. And we're going to, there we go, there we go. It's a nice amount. And you want to make sure it's nice and bonded in there. And it's lovely because it's so thin, it doesn't, kind of drip on you. It just goes whoop, right into where you want it to go. So we are moving through now at a very good pace. So now what we have is we have this guy bonded here, and I'm going to take out the alignment tool. And it's going to be used in a slightly different way now. So what we did was we measured the distance between the tip and the pivot point. And now we're actually going to install the pivot unit. So what I did was, as I'd mentioned earlier, I applied the pads. Now this is a little bit tedious. I'll see how long it takes me. I might cut away or not. We'll just see how it goes. So what you have to do now is you got to peel away all this tape. And it's not too bad. It's just, you know, it's really robust stuff because it's pro level. You pick it off. Make sure that all these little guys come off here. And again, I didn't do the section cutting it because, you know, you might have much more skill than I do. And if you do figure out a way to do this that's really elegant, please let me know. I might see if I can source pre-cut pads for any kits I will release in the future, but we'll see how that goes. It's not so bad to do it yourself, especially if you're doing something like on a black pivot housing, you're not going to see anything. So once you got these guys off, you take this centering tool and you pop it back in. There's my... So now what we're going to do is we're going to match up what we did earlier. We used this tool to find the 12-inch distance. So now we're going to flip it over and we're going to pop this in here. And we're just going to pop it right down into place. Now be careful because this stuff's super tacky. You don't want to mess with it. So I'm going nice and easy. Double checking. There we go. And straight down. Don't prefer an angle because you want it just straight down. Once you got in there, you're going to hold it for about 30 seconds. So the reason for that is these adhesives for most double-sided tapes of this quality, they recommend holding it down for a little bit. So yeah, I'm not going to overdo it here, but just to get an idea, like I'm really pressing hard on it. All right, so what we've done now is we've bonded the unit onto the tubes and we've added the pivot point. Now what we're going to do is simply remove the alignment tool. And it's a 3mm bolt. Like I said, if you're using the guides, you probably want something longer than this, but it's pretty obvious because you want the guide parallel ideally to the tube, so there you go. And as you can see here, you got that sucker centered, so it's really nice. I'm going to be adding some more parts to this whole assembly as we go along. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video for a second again, and I am going to prepare for the next section because there's a couple parts I'm going to show you how to assemble and get ready. All right, guys, be back in a sec. All right, friends, we're back. So now what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a small part that's actually very, very important. It's the cone that guides the actual pivot into the receptacle. So what I'm going to do there is, you're wondering why I have all these different glues. Okay, it's a medium. We're going to go back to the extra thick here. And what I'm going to do for this guy is I have an M3 bolt here. Now, these things should be cut down to 3mm. For today, I'm just going to use it because you can see how it installs a little bit better here. But what you're going to do is you're going to very carefully, and again, once again, you can do this with regular CA. I've done it with epoxy. There's no real rule here. I just find that with this thicker CA, I've had better luck and just easier to align it. Now, what I did was, before aligning it, just ran the head over some fine sandpaper, and I ran the base over some fine sandpaper to remove any flash and just level it out a bit. Again, depending on your printer and situation, you might not have to do this. So what you're going to do here is you're going to align these little guys, pop them together, and then eyeball it right down so this guy is dead center. So when you check it up, just look right down the hole. It's got to be dead center. Take your time. And it's no biggie if it messes up. You can just print another one, get it going on there. And of course, we're going to double check it in situ a bit later with the actual ballpoint pen pivot. So once you have it down, set it down, give it a little pressure, and then you can set it aside. I'm just going to use a handy Allen wrench there, so it can just cure like that for a little bit. So that preps that one. Now for these main parts here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the extra thick again first, and then there'll be one more step a bit later. So when you're gluing these guys, be careful how much glue you use, because the glue will flatten out quite a bit. So you don't want tons initially. Kind of like that. Remember in the first section where I talked about creating a little bit of a bevel? So now when I push these together, that little bit of glue that's kind of there will have a place to go. And that's it. Nice clean joint, boom. There's a little bit of friction in there, so I don't really have to clamp it. It's gonna be fine. Little drop there, a little drop there. And just use the applicator to kind of move it around just a little bit. And if you notice if it's gone too far on any section, just get it with a Q-tip or something so it doesn't kind of ruin your world. And once again, boom, there we go, right in. So it's starting to look like a tone arm. We got both the guide covers here in place. And there's one more that has to come on the back part of this guy. And I kind of like the shiny side. Some people might prefer the duller side, totally your call. These are symmetrical, there's no difference. So exactly the same deal, pop it on there. And a bit snug's okay. See, I'm working at that, it's not a problem. Just put your fingernail in there, just get it open, there we go. We're gonna do the same thing we did before, and the snugness is good because that's what keeps it in place while it's curing, so nothing wrong there. So, grab our glue, and on this one here, try to move it so you can see it better, there's a little bit more real estate at the top, so you kind of want to just put some up there. And now I am going to double check it because I don't want that stuff squirting out everywhere. Okay, that looks pretty good. And there we go. And those are all the integral components of the tone arm. I'm going to cut here for a second. Okay, so the reason why I have the other CA here, what I want to do is, I just want to put a drop in the back of these guys to make sure they're really nicely bonded. So this is just a safety drop here. So this is just a safety drop back here, and I can just kind of move it around because this part won't be seen, but I want it nice and solid. And the middleweight CA is nice because it's just going to go in deeper than the thick one would, and I don't particularly want to use a super thin one because that could run out the other side. Still got to be a bit careful, so I put a drop there, a little drop there. So these guys now are going to be very well bonded. And again, I'm not being super anal about the underside of it. If you really want to, mask things or stuff like that, that's fine. I really don't see a point in that because this is not what you're going to be looking at. And I'd rather have the extra glue bonding the whole thing together. So it's bonded all these bits together. And that's the whole pivot area. I'm not gonna really bother with the front part because there's tons of CA in here and I am not too concerned. I just wanted this part here to be really skookum. And we flip it over, there's no leakage, this is grand. So, we're moving along beautifully. I'm gonna stop one more time, just organize a couple pieces here and we shall continue. Okay guys, we're back. So we're gonna continue with a couple small additions here. I showed you how to make the cone earlier. And of course, if you want more reinforcement here, you could add like a little bit of nylon thread with epoxy or whatever you wish. I've had no problems with them separating, but again, it's not really rocket science for this part. If you want it beefier, you can beef it up, no problem. So this guy goes into here. And that's your guide. So when your ball point goes in here, it'll pop in every time into the proper location. And again, the top, you can trim it off, or if you don't want to trim it off, you can maybe make a decorative ball or something for it. But I'm not too concerned about that at this moment because I just want to show you guys how this stuff is put together. Okay, so now, what I'm going to do for my counterweight is a little bit different because the counterweight is going to be mobile, and I don't want the two parts that I'm going to be attaching to be fused to the main tubes. So what I do is the parts that you'd cut off earlier from your carbon fiber arrow tubes, save them. You can use them for alignment for this particular next section. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab the tubes and I'm going to show you how to do this part. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do here is, again, I want the shiny part on the outside, so I'm going to stick that in like this. So these guys are going to go through here. I'm going to put the counterweight on. This is the back side of it. No, not that it matters in a particular way, but there you have it. And this is the rough side, shiny side out. So I prepped these pretty much how I did the other guys. Just about, roughly an inch, a couple centimeters away. So what you do now, grab your extra thick again and put a little bit down the middle. And somewhere down the middle. I'm doing it at an awkward angle, obviously, so I can kind of get it in the shot, but when you're doing it, you can be a lot cleaner than that. So now, once again, what we're going to do is we're going to just push it together. Now, they all snap. Now, as you're working, keep turning these guys so it doesn't fuse, and that's really, really important. And I'm going to use a rubber band here to hold this together. There we go. So now we're going to even out the tension, and these guys will have a chance to cure. Oh, that guy popped off, but no worries. I can just spin that around. And I'm still spinning these guys here, so they're going to be working fine. Sometimes the band will pop on you. There you go. Nothing's perfect. Tuck the sucker underneath. There you go. Relax. All right. So this guy is set up to pull that tension towards the middle. And you can set that aside. So all that's left now are one cosmetic item and one functional item. The functional item being the lifter. So for this one, we're going to use the extra thick again. And we're just going to drop into the trough here. You don't need a ton of that. That stuff's going to go everywhere. So we prep that in there. I'm just using my Allen keys because I'm going to clean them up afterwards anyways, so you don't have to worry. This guy's tight, so when they get it in, I don't want to stop halfway. I want this guy to go in all the way right away. So, boom. And I'm going to get a little cloth here, clean up the front, and try to make so it's nice and flush. And that's your lifter. It's in there nice and tight. The next step is, this guy here, again, is cosmetic / bit of a damper. So the theory that I have with these guys is, it's kind of like glass in a recording studio. The more thicknesses you have, the less of a facility for sound to easily travel through the materials. It's probably minimal, but it's still there to a degree. And I really like the way it looks. So it's cosmetic and functional. We're going to talk about damping in the final video. This video will take us all the way to full assembly, but the final video will be wiring and possibly damping and a discussion of that, because that's a, for more serious turntable dudes and dudettes, there's always a concern about over damping, under damping. How is it going to affect the sound? Again, you can look at it many ways. The easiest way is make sure all your adjustments are right. Make sure your counterweight is proper. Play a record, see what it sounds like. If it sounds too lively and zingy, you can start damping it. But if it sounds perfect, well, you're there. That's simple, I'd say. I mean, again, the measurements, boy, that's a tough one. You could measure it, but that gets tricky, honestly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add this part. This part is a little tapered, slightly more open holes in the front than the back. And this one here, the way I do this one, is pretty primitive. I just pop some glue on here. And again, always be careful not to put too much glue in here, because that will just get really nasty really fast. I'm using the applicator to spread it around once it's out there. Now, we come back to working on glass. I showed you the glass for alignment and how important it is, but also for small things like this. It makes life really easy. Just line it up, feel it with your fingertips, pop it in. Once you got it lined up there, give it a second. Okay, we're pretty good. And then you're gonna have to hold it in place for a bit. I'm gonna cut away here because that's really too boring, so just give me a second. I'll come back with the piece fused on. Okay guys, I'm back. I'm still holding it on for a little while. You can clamp it, you can get really fancy here. Honestly, if you have it aligned on the glass, when you do this and the sides, it will be flawless. There'll be no issues whatsoever. So anyway, so that's the way that guy gets attached. Now coming back to this guy, so come back here, make sure that all this stuff is good. So now what we can do is we can get rid of this guy, Mr. Elastic, and let's pull out our rods and see what's happening. Alrighty, so the way I set it up is the back part, when you print it, there might be a slightly rougher section here, so I use that as the back. And it's not perfectly manicured yet. I'm gonna go in there and make that flawless. Again, the printing marks, I like them. I'm not changing any of that. So this is your counterweight. So the way this guy works is about as simple can be. It slides back and forth. I could have easily added heat inserts with clamps and all kinds of nonsense. And if you talk to a lot of purists in the turntable world, they'll say, the more stuff you have, the more weird resonances you can create and trouble. It's also more elegant, frankly. It looks really cool. Once you set it, it's good to go. And if you want it to be fairly locked in, you can always put a small dab of, not CA, because that'll make it permanent, but some other glue that can be broken fairly easily underneath, and that'll hold it in place. Now, coming back to this guy here, this is the pièce de résistance. For this tone arm, because it's a unipivot, sometimes it can go a little bit either way. With this eccentric counterweight, you can slide it either way to fix up the azimuth. Also, inside I left the infill. That is to give you a bit more weight in case you need it. If you don't need it, pull it out, it's lighter and you can adjust it again. It gives you a bit of flexibility. And if it's way too light, you can take out all the infill and you can fill in something heavier with glue in there to create a much heavier weight. It is extremely flexible, it'll accommodate anything. There's no problems with accommodation for different types of setups for this toner. So guys, this is part one. This is the tone arm structure. These little guys here are coming up in the next video with the tube and the wiring. If you have any comments, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm going to post this video today. I'll leave it up for maybe one day while I'm making the other video. If I see any questions in this video and it goes, hey Andy, yo, how'd you do this? I'll be more than happy to answer it in the upcoming video. So guys, there you have it. That is the full build for the tone arm. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you build one. The files are available for this one. They're 15 bucks. On Printables, I'll have the link, of course. The original tone arm is still free. You want to build that one, it'll work just as well. Bit more work because you got to drill some holes for the wiring and stuff. But if you want this one, the 15 bucks, it'd be really appreciated. Any money coming in at this point will just go back into the project to allow me to do more videos and more building. And again, if this tickled your giblets, please give me a like and subscribe. I'll be putting out more stuff, and any requests, hey, I'll try to accommodate them. But for now, step 1, Tonearm built. Boom. There you go, and there you go as well. All right, guys, I'm going to catch you in about 2 days. See you soon.